Since you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're already on this page, and this is the D100 Dungeon template that's based off of Alexander Moreland's work on Martin Knight's D100 Dungeon game. This template was really well done, but it was missing a few things from the lost uh, tome of extraordinary rules, and so I needed to add a few things for myself, and then I figured I would kind of upgrade a little bit of it as well and teach myself some pieces of Google Scripts. So I've done that, and I just wanted to share this with anyone who was interested. On this page is the instructions, and it kind of goes through some of the things I'm going to show you, but sometimes it's easier just to see somebody with a video. Now, the first thing is you have this template, but it's a view-only copy, so you definitely need to make your own copy. And once you've done that, it may ask for some permissions. So we're going to go through that to show how that works. And then from then on, I'll just kind of go through how I would use this in my games. So again, I'm going to go back to the instructions page once we're loaded here. So this is my copy now. And this goes through kind of with the character tab, backpack. The main controls is the one that I worked on a decent amount, and then some of the other ones that needed to be placed to run some of the background stuff. So let's start with the character page. This is what Alexander had made, and I needed to add a few things on it to account for the beasts that you might be getting later on in the game. But pretty much the thing that you need to know is that anything in blue you can change. Anything with a drop-down menu you can change. But anything that's black, you really shouldn't be messing with. It might break some of the pieces of the spreadsheet. So I'm just going to go through and show you, if I were going to be making my character, what this might look like. So Cora is a night dwarf, and light and dark we're just going to leave alone for now. She's got a reputation of 2. We have 1 fate and 4 life, and she's at 408 gold. And I haven't chosen a quest yet, so I'm going to leave that encounter mod alone for right now. We're going to go ahead and add our stats, and I'm just going to make up a few. They're pretty close to this, but I can't remember exactly. The adjustment is usually here, and then I added this combined number because I don't like to have to add each time, and this will just take account into what your adjusted is and add it together. We already have our attuned, and I need to fill in a few of these pips, so I'm going to say this is at 6, this one's at 4, and this one's at 5. As soon as you get above 50, these are automatically filled in, so right now I have Mighty Blow, and eventually I might get Spellcaster. Here are your items that you need to go ahead and list out. I'm not going to go ahead and spend the time to do that right now, but we'll just say if you type that in, I just put X's in here to know so that you knew you can type in these spaces. Let's just say we have a defensive 1. Gold is 20 and fix is 4. I'm just making these numbers up for right now. Armor 0. When you take damage, you're going to be changing these numbers here, and you'll see that they change in damage. At the end of a quest, sometimes your damage is completely filled out here, and you're going to repair it. Instead of going back through and hitting all of these for 0 at the very end, you can click this button, which will set all of the damage to 0. So if I click that, it's going to change all of these to 0 after it runs the script. Now this is the first time it ran a script, so it might be asking for permissions. We're going to find out what happens here. Yeah, so you might see this. You definitely need to authorize this for it to work. So I'm just going to sign in with my account. It's not verified because I'm not a verified person, but we're going to allow this to happen. I'm not collecting anything from you. It just has to be able to connect this. If you're not comfortable with it, then don't do it. It's totally fine. But from now on, anytime I click a button, it should work. Yep, so they all reset to 0. That's great. All right, so you can fill in all of your items, and it will total it. Also, let me just show you really quickly. Let's say this gave me a strength of 10. It'll add it down here, and as you can see, it automatically puts it into the adjustment and combines it for you. So that all is taken care of on its own. Down here, we have our belt slots, and you can type in whatever it is you want. and you can just leave these blank, but I wanted you to see that you can type there. Right now we don't have a beast, and I'm going to show you something about that a little bit later. Keys, levers, all that stuff you can go ahead and type in here, and as you can see, your poison counter and your disease counters also are affected there. All of your bravery and dodge, all of this stuff, you can just add in your stats. So the setup at the very beginning might take a little bit of time, but after that it shouldn't be too difficult. All right, so you're just choosing the ones here that you need. There we go. And then any spells that you might have run across. This is your primary hit points if you have it adjusted in any way, and then what you currently are at. If your current gets down to 0, then that's where you would have to spend one of your lives. Sometimes you will get a modifier on your time track, and you can adjust that here. Sometimes it's to strength, or maybe it's an intelligence, and then you can, then you can adjust what it is. Again, when you put something here, it does bring it up here and adjust yours so that your combined shows up here. So those are all kind of connected. Now what Alexander did was he had this time track here, and it worked really well. You can change the round that you're on. You can just type in 3 and it'll tell you what's happening in each of these. And that worked really well. But I wanted to do it a little bit more automated so that when I went to the first round, it automatically takes the oil away. And so that's what I did over here in the main controls. But let me go to backpack really quickly. Backpack and combat track are good for tracking things, but they don't interact with the main controls. So you can change anything on here and it's not really going to affect anything. It's mainly just for keeping track of what you've done. But main controls is kind of where I've set some stuff up. And as you can see, all of the things that I've used while I play the game are listed here. And so it's all in one place, it's all on the same screen, I don't have to scroll, and hopefully this is helpful for you. Again, you can't really change anything that's not blue or a drop-down menu. So there's a lot on here that you really can't change. But the interesting thing is we do have some buttons. I have a start button, I have an add 1 hour button. This is a delete your alert button. We have some poison buttons and some shield buttons. And all of those buttons interact with this character tab, which then in turn populate my main controls. So that's the way that you're going to deal with this. These two are blocked out because this is to do with your beast, and as you saw, I don't have a beast. But if I go ahead and choose one of the beasts available, and I give it a level, it will automatically give you the abilities it should have, how much gold it's worth, the bonus it has, and you can track its experience. And here's the HP, 10 out of 10. Now when I go back to my main controls, you'll notice the tiger shows up with all of its health, tells you the max damage you can deflect per round, tells you its abilities as well as how many you've used. You can see there's a blue number here, so after you use one, you can change it, and it will tell you how many you have left. Same with your damage taken. You can change that 1 at a time or 2 at a time, and it'll tell you how much is left. If you forget what Confuse, Roar, and Trick might do, if you hover over this, I've attached these quick hints to kind of remind you of what those do. You'll see your Potion of Lesser Healing is here in this top corner. Stretch that up just a little bit to see it. And then here is your armor, weapons, the monster reactions, and then your spell book. Also your skills are listed here. You can't change anything here or your spell book or your location. You need to go back to your character tab if you need to change anything. But you can interact with it a little bit. Let's say you do get hit in the head with your leather cap and you want to take some damage. If you click this shield one time and just give it a second, the armor will change. So this will increase the damage taken. So that's a nice way to be able to kind of track that without having to continually add onto your sheet with pencil and then erase it later. As you know, your shields can take a half pip of damage, and so I have included this half as well. So this is the full pip of damage, this is the half pip of damage. So those are helpful if you want to take a half pip. Some people have complained about monsters escaping too easily, especially on this natural 10 or this 9. And so Martin has given another way that you can play this, and I have included that if you do this drop down to play with less escapes, it does change that a little bit. And if you're not sure exactly what these mean, you can go back into the manual, but this is pretty self-explanatory. The dark magic reactions are here as well. As you notice, the spellbook is kind of grayed out currently, and that's because my intelligence is not above 41. But let's say my intelligence was at 50. 50 allows us to be a spellcaster. You can see it just unlocked here. And when I go back to my main controls, you'll notice spellcaster has appeared, and my spellbook is actually unlocked. 60 is not there because I'm not at level 60 yet, but it did unlock for us. Now, the main thing that I've really kind of been working on is this add 1 hour. So if you click on this add 1 hour, you'll notice that your hour goes up to 2 and the effect is blank. If I click it again, a monster should show up as an enemy 4. And it stays here as well, just to remind you that, oh, I do need to think about what to do with that in case you were drawing or moving or something like that. Once you've dealt with rolling your enemy for 4, you can click on this red X and it will get rid of that alert. And again, I click on the add 1 hour and my hour is added. You'll notice my oil level just went down because it said I needed an oil. That happens every time, so you don't have to worry about paying for the oil. Same thing for food at the end of a round. So I'm going to get up here. I got an enemy 5, so I'm going to delete that because I already rolled for it. You'll notice here my oil's at 19. When I click this, we're now at 18. Now there's sometimes where you're running out of oil, or perhaps you don't want to use any oil just because you're at a place where you're not expecting too much difficulty and you don't mind taking a 20-point penalty on each of your characteristics. You can turn your oil use off, and you just have to type in no, and you'll notice that it changes. Now the next time that I do this, the next time it calls for oil, it will not take one away. And you'll notice my strength at 78, my intelligence 41. You'll notice that changes in here in a minute. All right, so it just took a food away because it asked for food. And now in the next round, we're going to go back to 1, and it's going to not use my oil. You'll notice that the background turns black to remind you that you now have no light. All of my characteristics went down by 20, and my oil stayed the same. So that's one way that you can use this. Now, if I turn this back on to yes, it'll start using it again, but you have to wait until it asks you for oil again. And once it asks for oil again, the light comes back on, my strength, dexterity, and intelligence all go back up. I did include my poison and disease right here because at the end of a round, you need to check for your poison and disease, and so that's a helpful reminder that it's right here. And again, if you need to increase your poison or disease, you can click on the skulls, and that will increase either one of those. One interesting thing I'm going to show you really quickly is if I run out of food, let's say my food's at 0, and I get all the way through here, you'll notice it lit up, my food's at 0, just to remind you like, hey, guess what? You're about to start starving. You'll notice that once we get to round 12, the starving, I'm going to take 5 points of damage. And it does that automatically for you. So right there, I took 5 points of damage. My current HP is 15. My food is still at 0. One thing that once you've set up your entire character in your game, you do want to click the start button. What that does is it sets your time track to 1, and it does use 1 oil right away because of the very first round you do take an oil away. So there's 14 is now there. You'll notice my damage taken resets, my starving resets. So things kind of reset there for you. This damage and defense are the totals that are down here. So I have no damage and I have 1 defense, and that is listed down here. If somehow I had an item that gave me a damage of 2 to increase my damage, you'll notice that that is listed here as well. So that's something that you'll want to pay attention to. If your armor ever gets damaged enough so that it is destroyed, you'll notice that it will gray out. So I have to get up to 6 for that to happen. But once it hits 6, you'll notice it grays out and crosses out. And if I do try to increase it for some reason, it's just going to stay there. There's nothing else that can happen there. Your objectives are listed here, and you do have to list those yourself. Right here is objectives, loot, 3, weapons, or whatever your objective might be, and those will show up here so that you remember about those as you play. Again, the background, this is just information that helps this whole system run. Please don't mess with any of this or it will break. Same for your beast, this is just where it's pulling all the information. And back here for your instructions, this will give you an overview of how this all works. Please reach out if you have any questions or if something's not working. I would love for this to be helpful for anyone using it. And you can find me on the Facebook D100 page or on Board Game Geek. My username is Waffle Stomper there. All right, thank you guys.